Hello everyone, this is part 29 of What If Naruto Was Adopted by Kakashi, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Naruto was feeling a lot better as he sat in his room in the hospital. He had spent a lot of the night just talking with Gaara and getting to know the boy. He wasn't sure, but Naruto thought that he might have started to reach the other boy. Although heading his story like that, Naruto could see how Gaara had turned out like he had. He didn't want to think about where he might have been if he had been all alone in the world. He could easily have ended up just like Gaara. But it looked like maybe he had helped the other boy, only time would tell, and he hoped that Gaara would open up. He sighed as he counted down the time Hinata was usually around to visit in about an hour. That made him grin. She usually brought ramen with her, making it even better when she showed up. Although personally he couldn't wait to get out of here, it was just boring. At least the doctor had just told him that morning that he would be released tomorrow. There was so much he was planning on doing. First was to hit Ichiraku ramen as he had a lot of meals to make up for it. Then he planned on seeing how everyone was doing. Maybe bug Neji and Sasuke for a bit since that was always fun. Maybe get in some training with his dad, or maybe Lee if he was up for some as well. Then of course there was also hanging out with Hinata. He never got to really do much with her given all the insanity of the Chunin exams to do much, plus him in the hospital didn't help matters. He grinned with his hands behind his head as he started to think of all the things they could do. Normally they hung out as friends for years, but now that things were different, there were all kinds of secret places they knew where they could be alone. Originally it had just been a way to play alone, which was hard when your best friend was the oldest daughter of a major clan. Especially when that clan could see through objects. Thankfully with Hinata she knew the kinds of things her clan could do. You look like a boy with some interesting thoughts. A familiar voice broke him out of his daydreaming. The boy shot up to see Jiraiya there sitting on his window with a perverted grin on the man's face. I've seen that look plenty of times of a young man in love with a girl, Jiraiya told him. Just remember that she has a scary father from what I remember. Naruto's sweat dropped. Yeah, I do know. Naruto muttered, remembering Hiashi chasing him around the village when he thought that he and Hinata were up to something very naughty. It had been a complete misunderstanding, but still, the threat had been there. He had to revise his plans about Hinata to make sure that whatever they did alone, they weren't caught. Jiraiya heard what the boy muttered. Maybe he could use this for his latest book. The plot of a young boy seducing a princess was turning out very well, now with an overprotective father figure. Oh, he really wanted to take out his notebook. The ideas this boy was giving him could make him finish his latest novel fairly soon. So what are you doing here, Ero-senin? Naruto asked the man. Jiraiya scowled a bit. I really wish you wouldn't call me that. Yeah, but it's true, Naruto grinned. Oh yeah, he got her personality all right, the man thought to himself. Well, I got a special mission and I was wondering if you wanted to come with me. A special mission? Naruto's eyes lit up at the thought. What kind? Oh, trust me, this is a good one. I'm going to track down my old teammate and bring her back to the village. Naruto looked confused. That's it. Man, that sounds boring. I'd think I'd rather stay here and go on a date with Hinata-chan. Kid, this is important. Jiraiya couldn't believe how fast the boy blew it off. Look, I'm going after my old teammate Tsunade. He saw the boy blink as the name didn't register. One of the Sannin. Still nothing. She's the greatest medical ninja the world has ever known. Naruto thought about it. I think she sounds familiar. Brat, didn't you ever learn about the Third Shinobi War or personal history of the village in school? Naruto just shrugged. I never liked the book stuff in school, I was better in the practical thing. Jiraiya was about to say something, before he realized that he had been the same way in school and there was no way for him to chew him out without being a hypocrite. He pushed that aside as it wasn't important and wanted to get to the matter at hand. Okay then, look, she's important for the future of the village because she's going to be the next Hokage. What? That got a reaction out of Naruto. The old man is Hokage. Look, he was my teacher and trust me, when he was made Hokage I was never prouder. But he's old and his injuries were pretty bad. He only took up the job again because there was no one else that could be the Hokage. But he's old. You can fight the world but you can't fight time. Sooner or later time catches up to all of us. He stepped off the window and stood in front of Naruto. Hell, even I'm starting to feel my age. I'm not as fast or as strong as I used to be. Sure, I make up for it with experience and knowledge, and I'm still good enough in a fight. But there comes a time when we have to admit that we can't just keep doing this. He's realized that he's just not strong enough to go on, and he's picked Tsunade to replace him. That is, if he could figure out a way to get her to agree to the job, he thought to himself. Naruto looked down as he thought about it. As far back as he could remember, the old man had been the Hokage. He always thought that the day would come when he would take over for him. He never once thought that someone else would be Hokage. Naruto looked up at Jiraiya. Is she really good enough to take over for him? Naruto wanted to be sure that if there was going to be someone to take over, then they were the right person for the job. Not just anyone was going to take over for the old man after all. Jiraiya grinned. Kid, she's the granddaughter of the first Hokage. As I said, she practically invented modern medical treatments. She's also pretty damn strong, maybe one of the strongest ninja in the world. She's really that strong. He barked out a laugh. Trust me, I wouldn't want to mess with her, and I'm one of the few people that could take her on. Jiraiya thought that Naruto was on the fence. He could sense it. Just one more little push and the boy would agree, and he knew just what the kid would want to hear. Tell you what, while we're searching for her, I'll teach you a killer technique that only a handful of people know. Naruto's eyes lit up like it was his birthday. Really? Yep. So what do you say, kid? Naruto thought about it. He really wanted to get out of the hospital and enjoy some time with Hinata, but this mission seemed to be really important, plus this Tsunade woman sounded really strong. A new technique would also be something he could really use. That invasion had been a tough battle, and he saw just how bad things could get. If he wanted to become Hokage one day, he would need to be strong enough to protect everyone. Another thought came to him. His dad had told him about how because he was so busy his team wouldn't have much to do now. In fact, his dad had a mission in a few days, and Sakura and Sasuke couldn't go on it as it was a Jonin only, apparently, from what he had said. Naruto didn't like the idea of maybe getting stronger while his team was left behind. His dad always told him the importance of teamwork. Well, I might, but I want my team to come with us, Naruto told him. Jiraiya hadn't expected that. What do you mean you want your team to come? They worked really hard for the Chunin exams, and they were with me to help me when the invasion happened. It wouldn't be right to leave them behind, since my dad will be too busy with a Genin team for a bit. We're a team, and if they can't go, then I can't go. Jiraiya sighed as he thought about it. It would change his plans a bit, but it was doable. Plus, he had to admit the kid was thinking of his team. That was something he could appreciate. He also knew that if he trained Naruto in the Rasengan like he was planning to, he would have to think of something for them as well. He knew plenty of techniques, but he wasn't sure he knew much about them. This was looking like a lot more work for him as he ran a hand through his long white hair. 3 students. God, it had been so long since he had that. An image of 3 young students looking up at him in Rain Country as he taught them how to be a ninja. Those had been good years with them. An old pain filled him. The loss of Yahiko, Konan, and especially Nagato had been hard on him. For a moment he didn't want to do this again. The memories were old, but the pain still fresh. He closed his eyes as he wondered what he should do. He really wanted to spend some time with Naruto and to teach him the Rasengan, as it was his heritage. Kakashi had apparently already did the first stage, so it shouldn't be too long to teach him. Brat has got me over a barrel and he doesn't even know it, he thought to himself, slightly amused. Fine kid, you got it. Alright. Naruto couldn't wait to tell them. Hey, you think Hinata-chan can? No. Jiraiya was firm this time. Look, brat, you're lucky I'm allowing them to come, but that's it. This isn't some kind of vacation, it's a mission, and I'm not going to bring everyone you want. It's your team and that's it. Naruto slumped a bit. Being with Hinata on the mission would have been great, but he knew he was pushing his luck. Alright. Good. I'll get a few things settled with the Hokage and Kakashi about your team and see you tomorrow at noon. Jiraiya left through the same window he had entered by. Naruto watched him go and was wondering just how he was going to break it to Hinata that he was going on a mission that he had no idea how long it would take. He sighed. He had really been looking forward to spending time with her too. Elsewhere, Hinata was currently on her way to visit Naruto in the hospital again. She made a point to see him every day when she could. The last few days had been crazy, but the village was slowly starting to get back to normal. There was still a lot of construction, but that would take time anyway. The The villagers themselves seemed to have gotten over the shock of the attack and were slowly putting their lives back in order. She had also been able to think a lot about what she had learned about her boyfriend, a word she still had trouble thinking about without blushing slightly. Naruto had been adopted all this time, which looking at an image of the fourth Hokage she could see a slight resemblance, given that she was one of the few that knew his face for the longest of times. Still, the fact that he had the Kyuubi itself sealed inside of him was something she had never known could happen. Although Naruto had told her that he hadn't known about it for long, it had hurt a bit that he hadn't trusted her with it. They were the oldest of friends, but she could see that he had just been too afraid to tell someone. It was a frightening thing to have to deal with, but she was a bit proud that he was keeping the village safe. All his life he had been secretly guarding their village from the demon, and Hinata felt a sense of pride in Naruto's accomplishment. She walked into the hospital going straight to his room. She knocked gently and heard Naruto's muffled voice. She opened the door and saw him sitting in his bed smiling through his mask as usual. She always felt her heart warm at his smiles. They reached his bright blue eyes and she felt like she could look at his eyes forever. They were just so expressive and deep, she loved to look into them. They were such a stark contrast to the eyes of her clan. Hinata-chan. Naruto greeted her eagerly. She couldn't help but smile at how happy he was to see her. How are things today, Naruto-kun? Well, I'm getting out of here tomorrow, that's the good news. Hinata's expression lit up. Oh, that's wonderful. I know that you don't like it in here. Yeah, it's just so boring, he sighed. There's no one else in this room either, and mostly everyone is busy. I kept telling the doctors I was fine a few days ago, but they wanted to make sure I was okay. Oh well, at least when you visit it makes things better. Hinata blushed slightly as she walked over to him and placed the takeout ramen on a dinner tray for him. I got your favorite. Awesome. Naruto eagerly dug into it like he was a starving man. Since it was just him and Hinata, he pulled down his mask to eat his meal. Hinata nearly giggled as she saw him eat. He always looked so happy when he started eating ramen. He was soon finished and she noticed he had a noodle piece on his cheek. She had to take care of it soon, or else he might put his mask on it and then it might get stuck. Without even thinking, she took a small napkin that came with the takeout and wiped his cheek. Naruto-kun, you shouldn't eat so fast, it's not healthy. She told him gently as she got the piece. Then how else would I get you to be this close? He grinned at her. Hinata suddenly realized what she was doing and blushed deep crimson. She was very close to him now and her heart was beating faster. He could always do this, but it got worse ever since she started actually dating him. I just wanted to make sure that your face was clean. He chuckled. That's what makes you a good girlfriend. He noticed her blush and look shyly away. And you're really cute when you blush and stutter. Why, you really think so? She always felt self-conscious of her stuttering and tried to work on stopping, but it was a hard habit to break. Yeah, I do. She felt pretty happy that he said as much to her. Naruto liked to see her happy, but he knew that he had to tell her about the mission. He sighed. He really wanted to enjoy this. This might be the only time he would have with her until the mission. Hey Hinata-chan. I got something to tell you. Hinata looked at him and noticed the serious expression on his face and was starting to get a bit worried. Naruto told her all about the mission he was going on as soon as he was getting out the hospital. By the end she knew that it was a very important mission, but she also felt a bit sad. She was hoping to spend some time with him. That entire month during the training for the Chunin exams she missed seeing him. The only time she got to see him was during the final rounds. She had seen him only in the hospital, and even though they were alone at times she did miss going about the village with him. She had been looking forward to some time together outside of the hospital. Naruto did notice her downed expression and tried to think of something to cheer her up. Hey Hinata-chan, I don't know how long this mission will take, but how about we go out on a date when I get back? A date? Yeah. I want to make a special one for just us. What do you say? When I get back I'll take you out. He smiled at her. She blushed at the idea and liked it. She nodded her head, feeling slightly giddy at the thought of Naruto taking her out. They hadn't really had the change to actually do much in the way of dating, and her mind started to wonder exactly what he had planned. That's good, so don't worry, I'll make sure it's a great date. Although he had no idea what to do, at least he might have a long time to think on it. He could also ask Sakura for advice and get a girl's view on things. So if we're not going to see each other for a while, then how about we make the most of this? Elsewhere. It had taken most of the day, but Jiraiya had finally gotten around to finding Kakashi to tell him what Naruto wanted. Apparently he was laying low, not that he blamed the younger man, that woman although pretty he was sure had a temper to her. Still it had been a pain to find the man, someone didn't become an elite jonin for nothing after all. Kakashi had given the go-ahead, he was going to be too busy with a few upcoming missions to take care of his team. The Hokage had gone along with it as a genin team that was only partially complete and without their captain couldn't be used for missions other than D rank, and there was much more important work to be done. So he had gotten the approval for the mission. Kakashi would let his other two genins know and so that they could prepare. At the moment he sat in a branch of a nice tree thinking about what was going to happen. It was going to be a major pain tracking down Tsunade. Oh sure he could do it, she left an obvious trail when you know what to look for, and she was only interested in keeping predators and the loan sharks out of her hair. Of course that was only half the challenge and might even not be the hard part of it. No, he knew that the hardest part would be convincing her to come back and take the job. Oh, that wasn't going to be easy, given the loss of both her younger brother Nawaki and also Dan. After the war and all that death she just broke inside. She just couldn't take it and so she ran. It was only through the favor of the current Hokage that allowed her to do as she wanted. Truth was he had no idea what he could say to her, he hadn't even seen her in years, although he was certain she was still using that genjutsu of hers to say young looking. A perfect example of a woman that was vain about her appearance, but then again, if anyone knew her secret to keeping a young looking appearance, that genjutsu would be all over the place. He grinned as some even though that her looks were even enhanced than how she had really looked like. Truth was she had looked like that, he knew all too well. All too many times he had gone to sleep with her image in his mind. Yeah, he knew he was an old fool, hell he had been a young fool trying to get her to date him since they first met as genins. Back then she was pretty flat, but he still thought she was the most beautiful girl he had ever met. So over 30 years or trying and rejection, and even now he would still love it if only once she would give him a chance. Yeah, he was now an old fool still in love with the first girl that had stolen his heart and had no desires of returning it, as she had said many times over. But the heart would want what it wanted apparently. He could put his emotions behind him when they met, he was a professional at times, but this would be hard on him. Seeing her for the first time in years would be a bit hard, but she needed to finally come home. Konoha needed her more than ever, and in a way he knew that she needed to come home and face things. She needed to learn how to heal those wounds. He just hoped that he could figure out a way to do that, and bearing that at least maybe he could hope Naruto could. He had been watching the boy and something about him could change a person. Wow, you look pissed today. A female's voice broke through his thinking. Tell me about it, I was having such a good morning and then it gets ruined because of some damn pervert. A very familiar voice that he heard that morning in fact. Jiraiya looked down into the steam-filled area of the woman's open-aired baths. He noticed the familiar purple hair, and from what he could see was a familiar body wrapped up in a white towel. I swear to God if I see that guy again it will be too soon. Anko told Kurenai. What exactly happened? Kurenai had seen her friend looking a bit in a bad mood. Jiraiya cursed his rotten luck. He thought a little peeping would have been nice before leaving for the mission, but this was getting dangerous. He had gotten an eyeful of that woman this morning and apparently was lucky to get away with his skin intact. Well, he wasn't going to tempt fate now and slowly got up and tried to silently leave. But of course, cursing his damn love for the female form after it happened. He took one quick peep and stepped on a small twig growing out of the branch which snapped underfoot. He looked down at it in horror and he could almost count it off in his mind before it happened. Is there someone up in that tree? He tried to move, but when they started throwing anything that wasn't nailed at his location. A wash bucket slammed into his head, that made him lose his balance. The good news was that he fell into the pool, so it was a soft landing. The bad news was that he landed in the pool. Coming up for air he was met with the angry looks of many women of Konoha, including a very familiar face. Oh, this must be Karma, Anko said, thankful she still had on her towel as she cracked her knuckles, a very sadistic grin on her face as she looked down at him. His face paled. He knew that look he had seen in on Tsunade many times. I can explain, he tried to say. Tell it after we kick your ass, Anko told him. The screaming from the hot springs that day could be heard halfway through the village. It was early morning as Sasuke and Sakura were waiting by the north gate for everyone else. Sakura sighed as she hoped that Naruto wouldn't be late. Knowing him, he could be trying to get a last meal of ramen in, saying goodbye to Hinata or both. She kind of envied Naruto and Hinata, they seemed very nice together. She cast a look to Sasuke, he was still in the new black clothing that he had for the Chunin exams. His katana that he was learning to use was sheathed behind his lower back as usual. It did kind of suit him more, she thought, trying not to blush. She looked down at herself, she had changed her own style since her training. Gone now was that red dress she normally wore. Anko had told her time and again that it wasn't proper ninja attire. She had to admit her new clothing did allow for better movement and protection. Her tonfas was slung by her hips in a new belt and holster that felt a bit more at ease on her body. Now she had on a pink shirt and a red vest with shin protectors like Anko wore and forearm protection. It got a bit heavy at times, but she was getting used to the weight. The ninja mesh she wore over all her exposed skin was another thing she got used to. But she had been glad for it. Her match in the Chunin exams would have gone a lot worse for her without the protection. She still remembered how badly Ino had been cut up by that kunoichi from Mist. Sakura did wonder what happened to that team, they just kind of disappeared in all the chaos. Then again, looking around, she could still see the scars of the attack on her village. No one could say for certain how long it would take to repair it. Finally, he's here, Sasuke said as Sakura looked to see Naruto running up to them with a backpack on. Sorry I'm late, Naruto told them. You're turning more and more into your father, Sasuke sighed. Hey, I couldn't help but be late, Naruto shot back. This better not involve the road of life, cats or any other excuse we've heard all before or I'll hurt you, Sasuke told him seriously. Hinata or ramen? Sakura asked him. Naruto blinked before smirking behind his mask, placing a hand behind his head, both actually. She only smiled and rolled her eyes, she wasn't surprised at all, she had known him for years, so by now she had a pretty good idea of his personality. Which was odd, as Naruto also kept up ways of surprising everyone. Sakura felt that if she knew Naruto until they were both old and retired, he would still be finding ways to keep surprising everyone. So all we're missing is Ero Sennin, Naruto said, looking around. No, you're not, and stop calling me that, Jiraiya said as he made his way to them from behind. Although the genin knew who they were going on this mission with and why, they couldn't help but look. Mainly at the few bandages on his face, and he seemed to be favoring his left side slightly. What happened to you? Naruto was the first to ask. Jiraiya just grumbled, you never mind about that, just fell at the wrong time at the wrong place. Anyway, let's go, the sooner we leave the sooner we can find Tsunade before she decides to skip whatever town she's currently in. The four of them made their way out of the gates and onto their new mission. Although Naruto was the one to ask a few questions as soon as they were starting. So where will we find her? Naruto asked the old man. If she moves around a lot, won't she be hard to find? I know her well enough to know her habits, he explained to not only Naruto but the others as well, since they should know this information as well. She likes drinking and gambling, so places where she can find both in good supply is a primary target. She'll also stay in our country, although she had been given leave of the village, she can't leave the country. Even the Hokage couldn't have gotten away with letting a ninja leave the village and wander around the world as they pleased. Staying within the country was one of the few stipulations that Tsunade was given before she left. Jiraiya himself was an exception since he was the spy master for their village, so him going into any country was a given. That was why he made sure to send reports now and then just in case anyone was wondering what he was doing. Since it gave the illusion of him actually doing work he was supposed to. The only time she won't be is when she's ducking her creditors. He continued on. Creditors? Sakura asked him, wondering what he was getting at. She loves to gamble, but the thing is, she sucks at it, he said bluntly. In fact, she's so bad she's called the legendary sucker. He thought about warning him about not making a perverted comment on that nickname in her presence, but he figured that they wouldn't make the same mistake he had a few years ago when he came across her. Anyways, if she goes to ground it won't be for long. So how exactly do we pick up her trail? Sasuke asked. I got a few ideas, mainly from how he had been secretly keeping tabs on her all this time. He worked with the Hokage to make sure that her debts never got out of control. It wouldn't do to have her debts so high that they couldn't protect her from the law. Or the usual loan sharks as well. The last thing they needed was for loan sharks start looking to hire other mercenaries or worse, other ninja to hunt down Tsunade. That could be bad for all kinds of reasons depending on which country they were hired from. He signed, looking at the kids. I know of a few places she was last seen. All we have to do is follow the trail of money she owes and it should point us in the right direction. In the meantime I can help give you kids a little training. I heard Kakashi boast once that he wanted to make you three into this generation's version of my team, the Sannin. He had heard that that was the excuse Kakashi gave for picking these three for his team, although looking at what they had done so far it might be possible. Sure, they were a little rough around the edges, but he felt that he could almost see them as a younger version of his team back in the day. It should prove interesting to say the least to see what skills these kids had. Granted, he wanted to train Naruto for more personal reasons, but maybe it was the nostalgia that was getting to him. So when we get the time, I'm going to see what you kids got. We can do some basics so I can get a handle on your skill levels and see where we go from there. Cool. When do we start? Naruto asked excitedly. Brat, I can still see the damn mountain and the gate. Jiraiya made a mental note on Naruto's impatience. He would have to see about fixing that, if it was possible. We have to at least make some distance. Look, tonight we'll camp and I can see what you kids got. It will give me time to plan out your training. Naruto looked a little disappointed, but the fact was that he was going to get some training in later. He just hoped it didn't involve being thrown into another chasm. One time was enough for him, not to mention having to ride the boss Toad hadn't exactly been fun either. Looking at his teammates, he could see that Sasuke was eager to learn something new as well. Sakura looked interested, but she was more relaxed about it. So how far is this village we're heading to anyway? Sasuke asked, if only to find out how long they would be on the road. A couple of days to get there. We'll spend a day or two looking around and then we'll head on out again. Jiraiya told them as they started their journey together. Unknown location. A few days later. Deep underground in one of many of his secret bases, Orochimaru was in his personal quarters as she checked over his body, well, the one he was currently using. He peeled back the fake skin showing the face of a young woman. He didn't care about things like gender, he was beyond such matters now. He had ascended into a higher being, something beyond such notions. He had moved beyond the limitations of being human long ago. But he couldn't find a body that could hold him for more than a few years. Looking at the face, he could see the signs of this body starting to decay. Faint veins were starting to show in certain areas, the skin felt a bit colder to the touch and waxy. This body wouldn't last too much longer and he would need a new one soon. Already a selection process was being used, but he really wanted Sasuke's body. To have the Sharingan would make it so easy to learn every single jutsu in the world. Knowledge was the ultimate power, and to know everything would make him a god among men. His injuries from his fight with the Hokage were healed, given that the fight had ended from the entire building collapsing under them. To think that a genin was apparently responsible for it, at least that's what his spies had informed him. It was such a shame that the Uchiha clan had been wiped out. He could have taken his pick from an entire clan. Instead he was left with but only two choices. Itachi, well, that was a road he wasn't willing to go down again. He had been beaten too easily, so he focused on the only other living Uchiha. Sasuke was still a bit too young, but with time and some training the boy could be the greatest host body he could get his hands on. He had already marked the boy, the power would lure him over to him, at least that was the plan. So far things hadn't gone as well as he had hoped. Suna had found the dead leader and figured out that he had played them for fools. Now both the Konoha and Suna's ties were stronger and he was at the top of their list of missing nin to find. Not that he cared about it, but any sound ninja would be fair game in their territories now. The Leaf Village hadn't been as damaged as he had hoped and he had still failed to kill his old master. Sasuke himself hadn't seemed to be using the curse seal either, at last nothing that anyone could find. His spies in Konoha were limited now. Anbu had been looking deeper in how far Orochimaru's spies in the village went. They wouldn't find them all, but they would have to go underground for a bit. Orochimaru replaced the fake skin onto the body's face. He had no idea who the person once was, not that it mattered. She had been a strong ninja and that was all that he needed to know. Looking back into the mirror, his face now looked as it did decades ago. Her smirked at how only Jiraiya was the one that looked his age from his own team. As soon as he finished, he heard someone knock on his door. Enter, the leader of Sound commanded as he sat in a large chair awaiting whoever it was. Orochimaru was pleased to see it was Kabuto. The young boy was the best servant he had. No one was more loyal, dedicated and skilled. It was hard to find people like him. In fact, he didn't know of anyone offhand that he trusted more than Kabuto. The boy was a rare find and one of the reasons he would never consider using him as a host, even if the boy would do it gladly. No, Kabuto was worth more as he was than just another host body. I'm glad to see you got out of Konoha in one piece, Orochimaru smiled at his spy. The boy bowed slightly and smiled. It wasn't entirely easy, but in the confusion it was easy to move around. I did have to ensure that we still had some information coming out of Konoha, now that I'm known as a spy for you there. It had to happen eventually, Orochimaru agreed. Yes, but I was able to get one last piece of information, it's why it took me so long to get here. Kabuto pushed up his glasses. Sasuke has left the village apparently. Oh, now Orochimaru was getting interesting. He's on a mission with the rest of his team, but the odd thing is, it's not with Kakashi. My contact said that the man looked to be Jiraiya himself. Orochimaru's eyes narrowed as his mind went to work. There was something going on. That man wouldn't take on 3 genins for no reason. Although a memory of those 3 orphans came to mind, was the sentimental old fool trying again where he had failed? No, Orochimaru didn't feel that it was totally correct. No, the man was up to something, plus this could be either a problem or a solution. The problem was that if Sasuke was getting training under Jiraiya, then he might not view as needing Orochimaru's help to kill his brother. That wouldn't do at all. The solution was a simple one. He would find out what they were after and deal with it himself. He would show that boy what real power was, and also he could also throw a wrench into Akatsuki's plans if he could kill the Jinchuriki of the leaf as well. Plus he owed the boy for ruining his fun earlier as well. Kabuto, I think it's time I had a reunion with my old friend, Orochimaru smirked. Send out best trackers. I want to find out where they are heading at all times, but do not let them know that they are being followed. Don't underestimate Jiraiya. If he suspects something, he will be even more deadly with his guard up. Kabuto bowed to his master. As you wish. Fire country. Jiraiya looked at the open field in the forest. It was the perfect place to stop for the day. It had been a few days and already he felt he had a lead with what he had learned in the last village they had been at. Plus he was able to buy the items he needed for the next few training he was going to give. Plus it was a nice out of the way spot too. Alright kids, get your stuff unpacked and set up over there, he pointed off to the side. We might as well start the next training. So you're not just going to watch us spar again? Sasuke asked. The last few days Jiraiya had them spar against each other as well as show what they were capable of doing. He could understand that, and the man had said he needed to know their skills, but he was anxious to get to some real training. Yep. Alright, get to it. The sooner your stuff is put away, the sooner the training can start, he told them, smiling as he watched them run off. It was nice seeing kids so eager to learn again, he found. When they were ready, he had them stand in front of him as he got a few items ready himself. He stepped up to Sakura. Alright, you're pretty good with genjutsu and water, right? Sakura nodded her head. Yes, I trained a bit with Kurenai sensei and she said I had a gift for it and learned a couple of them from her. And I know 2 water techniques, Aqua Tower and the Hidden Mist technique as well. Jiraiya paused. I haven't seen you use that last one yet. When did you even learn that? Sakura looked a bit bashful now. Well, it's hard to move around as I can't really see that far on it. I've only really used it in training. Kakashi-sensei taught me it as I think he learned it from his fight against Zabuza. Jiraiya nodded as he guessed that Kakashi learned it from his Sharingan most likely. He knew of the technique as well. The village of Mist wouldn't like it if they found out one of their best jutsus was slipping out among the leaf. He also guessed the other reason the girl didn't use it. You had to use your own chakra to spread it out. The larger the effect, the more chakra you needed, and the girl was very careful of her use of her chakra. He might have to help her expand that later. Well, unfortunately I'm not good with genjutsu or have an aptitude for the element of water. He could see she looked a bit disappointed with that. But I can help you learn these little things I got from Konoha before we left. He handed her a scroll as she looked at him. Opening him up, she saw the scroll was about how to make water clones as well as a few other water-based jutsus. She was a little confused as to why water clones were here, as she had already been taught that in her training with Anko and Kurenai. At least the other 2 were ones she didn't know. Like all the elements, they are easier to do when you got the actual element to work with, Jiraiya explained to not only her but the others to make sure they all knew this part. When you can't use the actual element, you can forge your chakra into that element, as you all should know. In a way you can use a part of yourself for this, using body heat to help form fire, the water inside of your body to help connect to the element of water and so on. Wind is one of the only ones you usually don't have to worry about, since if you can't breathe then you're in trouble anyway. But I suppose if you're underwater you could use the air in your lungs. Anyways, each element is different and requires slightly different skill set. Water is actually a decent one to work with from what I gathered. Anyways, take the water clones for example. They only have a fraction of the strength of the person, but that means that unlike say the shadow clones where your strength is equally split between them all. With this you'll only have to put a fraction of your strength and chakra reserves into them. This should also help you out in battle too. Yeah, I remember. Sakura nodded her head. I noticed that when I used them earlier, but why is the water clone on this? I already know this one. It came with the scroll. I got it off a mist ninja years ago and just never really could learn any of this. But since this is a real scroll from a country that specializes in water techniques, it should have a bit more details on the water clones that I know Konoha wouldn't normally have. You might find some useful new information about it. But the other two should be more helpful to you. He explained to her. The other two water jutsus in there are the water whip, which is good for capturing, and I think I heard you had an encounter with the other one. She looked to see that the other was water bullets that Miss Genin she had faced used it, and it had been a good offensive move. Sakura started to memorize it immediately at that point. Jiraiya looked to Naruto and already knew what he was going to teach him. He went over to a box and got an item out of it. He threw it at Naruto, who caught it and looked at it. It was a rubber ball as he looked at it, wondering what this was going to be for. Since Kakashi trained you all in that balloon thing earlier, this Naruto will teach you the next step in that training for a special jutsu. Jiraiya told him. You see, although that was a perfect example of how to shape a jutsu, it was actually the first of 3 steps to learning a special jutsu that only me and Kakashi know. Really? Naruto's eyes lit up with that. So was Dad going to teach us all this jutsu? No. Jiraiya told them all, seeing the looks he was getting. This jutsu was created by the 4th Hokage himself, and since you all know Naruto's past, you should all understand that only Naruto is going to be trained in this, as it's his heritage. I know it because I trained him and he taught it to me. He taught it to Kakashi, who used it to develop the Chidori. But if you want to learn this, it will be Naruto's choice later on, as he's the only one that should be the one to decide on who to teach this to. Naruto wasn't sure what to say as he looked down at the ball in his hand. He never really had much from his biological parents. He had a picture of them that he kept in his room, but other than that there really wasn't much. If he could learn this, then he would have something important that he could carry with him at all times. Sakura and Sasuke looked on, both getting the feeling that they could feel what Naruto was thinking. Sasuke himself knew what it was like to want something of your family. Naruto had known his adopted father all his life, but not his biological parents. Jiraiya threw an iron rod to Sasuke, who caught it and looked at it as though he was being played with. He gave Jiraiya a look as though to ask if the man was being serious. You know that lightning technique of Kakashi's, the Chidori, right? Well, think of this as taking that training to a new level. He explained to the boy. I'm going to train you how to use lightning and put it into your weapons, as well as manipulate it even further. Lightning can be formed easily, but it's hard to control as well as dangerous. But if you can learn how to control it, lightning could be a very deadly weapon for you that only your imagination can limit you. For this, for example, will teach you how to put lightning into that sword you carry. Sasuke looked at the iron rod and he had to admit that did sound appealing. To create his own jutsus would give him an advantage, as no one, not even his brother, would know what to expect until the fight began. Plus he was already thinking of other kinds of uses with it if he would master that element, like Jiraiya was explaining. That rod will act like a lightning rod for you, Jiraiya explained further. It will help you draw out the lightning, but the problem will be keeping it in. It will want to run out on you, jumping from the iron to somewhere else. You'll have to keep it reined in a way you're going to have to keep a hold of lightning in your bare hand. Jiraiya smirked. That won't be easy, and you better start small. You don't want to fry your own hand in one day. Jiraiya looked around him and crossed his arms. This might turn out well after all. Alright, each of you pick a large area for your own and I'll watch the 3 of you. Sasuke, I want some extra space for you. I don't want you accidentally throwing out a lightning bolt by accident. The 3 genins quickly got to picking out their own training spots. As Jiraiya started to look over their training, it brought me memories of good times in the past. Of his own training as a genin to his training of his other students. Maybe, just maybe these kids would surprise him. Hinata sighed as she was sitting in the backyard of her home. Her pet rabbit was on her lap as she pet its white fur. It had been over a week since Naruto and his team left, and she was starting to miss him. She knew he would be back, but she was so used to seeing him around the village. It got like this every time either of them had a mission. She was also wondering what Naruto would learn by the time he got back. He said he was also going to train some more with Jiraiya of all people. Although it took her a moment to figure it out, she wished he wouldn't call a legendary ninja Ero Sennin. It was very disrespectful. But not only Naruto, but all of Team 7 would gain some kind of training. They were all going to get stronger, and what was she doing, sitting around with her pet? It wasn't like she didn't want to train. Kurenai was out on a mission. Shino was doing some special breeding for some new bugs. Kiba was training with Akamaru. She was thinking on how to get stronger as well, since she didn't want to fall behind, and also because she wanted to be able to stand with Naruto. She wanted to become someone he could be proud of to be with. Yes, she knew that he always said kind things to her, but she always had confidence problems as far back as she could remember. There was just so much expected of her as the possible next head of the clan. Even when she was in the academy, she had to study Hyuga clan laws, fighting style, proper manners, and so on. That training month with Sakura had been great because she felt that both of them had gotten stronger. She had gotten a lot closer to Sakura in that month. She found that Sakura herself felt like she was weakest member of Team 7. Hinata could relate to that. Kiba and Shino seemed to be so strong to her. Now that Sakura was off training with one of the legendary Sannin, there was no telling how much stronger she was going to get. So what am I doing just sitting around then? She asked herself. She needed to become stronger, not only because she didn't want to be left behind, but lately she had been thinking. She was to be the net head of her clan, and she wanted to make her father proud. She had missed out on the Chunin exams this year, but there was another in 6 months. She wanted to be ready for that. She wanted to become someone better. Working with Kurenai, Anko, and Sakura for that month made her think of what she would do with her life. Kurenai was closer to her than any other female adult. Sometimes Kurenai reminded Hinata of her own mother. She was surprised by that thought. She missed her mother, but it had been so long ago that she couldn't remember as much about her as she used to. It was a scary thought for her, but maybe that was why she was so close to her team sensei. Anko and Sakura had shown Hinata that you were what you made of yourself. Hinata dropped her rabbit onto the grass and watched him hop around eating some of the grass. She was surprised by how smart the animal was. Obviously it had some training, as it knew to come back to her room and would actually go into the small open cage where he slept. She didn't have to worry about him, and the entire clan by this point had seen her enough times with the rabbit to know it was hers. "Ah, I figured you might be here," a familiar voice said from behind, startling her. She turned to face her older cousin walking up from behind. "You should be more aware of your surroundings," Neji told her as he tried to chide her as best as someone from the branch family could to the main house. "You are a ninja after all now." "Ah, you're right. Sorry, I was just lost in thought." She sighed, knowing that she should be more aware, but she felt safe here. This was her home. Then again, she still remembered that night she had been kidnapped. Was that the reason he told her to be more aware? It was true that security had changed since that night, but no security was perfect. He sat down next to his younger cousin. He had always looked out for her since they were younger, partly because as a member of the branch family he was supposed to, but also because he was close to his cousin. Sometimes she and Hanabi were like the younger sisters that he never had, plus Hinata was the kind of person you felt that you had to look out for. "So what is it that you are worried about?" Hinata fiddled with her jacket as she did sometimes when nervous. Well, I was thinking of how to train to become stronger. I don't want to fall behind." Neji knew that Hinata always had issues with her own strength, so he wasn't surprised to hear this. "Naruto-kun is training right now with everyone else, and I'm not sure what I can do to become stronger." He nodded his head as he thought about it. As far as he knew, everyone else was training hard as well. That attack had taken them all by surprise, and in many cases had been the worst combat any of the genins had experienced. Neji, who had been a ninja for over a year, couldn't remember a day where he had fought as hard as that. Looking at her, he had an idea that might work. Given that Guy was busy, they didn't have as many missions as they used to. His team often would train together when they didn't have any real missions, but maybe he could help. "Would you like me to help you in your gentle fist skills?" Neji offered. Hinata looked up at him surprised. She knew that Neji was a true genius in the gentle fist. She had seen her own father offer some advice to his nephew at times when Neji's father wasn't around to help. To have Neji help her train would be a big advantage to her. It was true that her form was slowly coming along, but Hanabi was getting better and Hinata wanted to make her father proud of her skills and impress Naruto. You would do that. Aren't you busy with your team? He shrugged. We can train together still, but you are family and I should help you if you need me. If you want you can even join my team for training, although I warn you, my team's training is a lot more physical than what you're most likely used to. He still cringed at how it felt that first month of guys training to break them in, as he once put it. All those very early days and insane physical training made him ache for weeks. Getting up he brushed off his shorts and he looked at her. Well, if you have some free time we can get starting right now if you want. She got up quickly. Thank you Neji-san. He gave her a small smile. I told you, we're family so I should help you if you ever need it. Team 7. Sakura breathed deeply as she looked at the trees in front of her. Sweat was covering her body and she felt like she could just drop at any moment, but she still was trying to get this new jutsu down. One more she went through the hand seals and thrust out her hand. The water whip shoot out and wrapped around a branch. She pulled hard. The point of this was so that the whip would be strong enough to hold a person. If it fell apart or wasn't strong enough then it wouldn't be any use. When she first started it took a few tries to ever get the jutsu working, then it was to actually wrap around the target. She gave one pull and for a second it held, but then the water broke apart and she fell to her knees. That was it. That was the last try she had in her. She was nearly completely out of chakra. She fell onto her back and sighed. This whole week had been nothing but training while Jiraiya went searching for Tsunade. Looking to her side she wanted to see how the others were doing. Naruto was still working on the Rasengan. He was getting close to bursting the balls at this point. Maybe in a day or two he would get to the next level, whatever that was. A loud zap and crack sound followed by swearing was heard. She looked to see Sasuke flexing his left hand. He had stopped using his right one since he couldn't close it anymore. Most likely it would take a night's rest for him to be able to close it again, she bet. She normally would care, but she was just too tired to really move at this point. All the water training was taking its toll on her, but she felt that she was getting stronger. Sasuke looked at the metal bar that was sitting in the grass. He flexed his left hand as he bent to pick it up. This was turning out to be a lot harder than he thought. His right hand couldn't close and the tips of his fingers felt a little numb, so he had stopped using it in case he did permanent damage to it. Picking it up, Sasuke could feel the slight heat of it from all the electricity being sent into it, but thankfully not too hot. He sighed as he took a deep calming breath. He had been at this for a week, but every failure brought him one step forward. He no longer had the electricity shooting out of the piece of metal, so he was glad for that much. When it leapt from the bar it literally could and would go in any direction. He had zapped himself a few times from that. Naruto had nearly gotten a good one once too. This was why he trained as far away from Sasuke as he could now. Sasuke thought about the feel of the jutsu. He could feel the energy wanting to go through the bar to the end and jump out, and he had figured out how to stop it with his chakra, but then it was like trying to hold a wild animal with his bare hands. The power wanted out and didn't care what Sasuke wanted. It was very difficult, but if he could master it then he could figure out how to put it into any metal weapon. Plus it wasn't only this, but what if he could shape the Chidori? He knew that putting the Chidori into his hand was the first step. He had spent a month learning that technique alone. He had struggled to keep the power in his hand, but putting it into another object was different. With his hand he had his own chakra network to work with. An inanimate object was different. Picking up the metal rod he calmed himself as he focused on making the electrical energy into his hand and prepared to send it into the metal. For Naruto he was working hard on this next stage of the Rasengan. So far the rubber ball wasn't breaking. He sat on his butt cross-legged as he focused. He could see places in the ball bulge out in several places, but still he couldn't get it just right. He tried putting in more power, but he lost focus of keeping it stable and it would fall apart. He needed to control it long enough to put in more power. Each time he tried, each time he got a bit closer. Currently he was trying again and he thought that for one moment a small break might happen, but then the chakra ran out. He scowled as he glared at the ball as though it was personally offending him. He had to keep putting in more and more chakra, but to keep the spinning motion as well was hard for him. Okay, one more try. He muttered to himself. In the trees watching them, Jiraiya smiled seeing them. He noticed that Sakura was out first. He wasn't surprised as her chakra levels weren't on par with the boys, but he did notice she lasted at least an hour longer this time. He had been hidden in the woods for the best couple of hours watching them and seeing how they were doing. He might have to give a few hints if they couldn't break through the walls they were up against. Personally, he felt that a person really could only truly learn by doing it and learning it yourself. Every mistake you made only added up to the experience you could gain, at least that's what he liked to say, and it wasn't exactly a lie. But he couldn't be in two places at once. The town they were near, he had picked up a trace of his teammate. It had taken some time and some persuasion on a few men that had apparently loaned her money that she hadn't paid back. In the end he had ended up paying for Tsunde's department, but at least he gained some information out of it. He had a better idea of where she was heading now. She usually had certain patterns that he found over the years. After all, no one knew her like he did. Plus he knew the few cities and towns she wouldn't dare show her face, not after some unpleasantness, usually her getting angry and that temper of her causing trouble. Jiraiya grinned, remembering that one day he found a casino being rebuilt. When he had seen the roulette table embedded into the ceiling, he had known who it had been. Apparently she had caught casino cheating and had taken it personally. Looking at his students, he decided now was enough. If they pushed themselves too hard, they wouldn't be able to move tomorrow morning. Walking into the small clearing, he clapped his hands, getting their attention. All right, that's enough tonight. We're going to have to break camp in the morning and get on the road again. I got a decent lead and we have to hurry before she runs again. How often does she run? Sakura asked, rolling onto her stomach and got into a kneeling position. She really didn't feel like getting up, but the prospect of sleep, she would crawl to her bedroll if she had to. Seems like a lot to me, Naruto muttered, throwing the ball into the small pile. So when are you going to help with our training? We've been working hard, but you're always gone. Hey, I'm a busy man after all, Jiraiya told him. Naruto gave him a suspicious look. You're not goofing off looking at women or going to those strange places with the oddly dressed women again, are you? Jiraiya tried to hide his reaction to that, so maybe he liked to indulge a bit. He was entitled to a little time to himself after all. Plus those bars with the women were nice places to gather information, as a lot of men went there to blow off steam. A few drinks with a good woman under your arm could loosen the tongues of a lot of men. So if he enjoyed himself while he was working, well, that should be a problem then, should it? Unfortunately, the kids had learned fast to keep their own money safely out of sight, so Jiraiya had to use his own funds. It wasn't a major problem, but it was a huge pain to fill out all those expense claims and justify his expenses. Look, we got an early day, so get some sleep and tomorrow we'll be hitting the road again. Jiraiya tried to deflect the boy's accusation. If you're quick, maybe I'll give you some hints on how to improve. That he found had a magic all its own as the kids silently started to shuffle to their tents. There were 3 tents in the area, one for Jiraiya himself, 2 for the boys, and obviously one for Sakura herself. As he watched them go, he decided to start on a small fire, in the campfire they had. They already ate, but it would help deal with any animals in the area. Plus he had this feeling that they were being watching for some time now. With the fire he could use that as a distraction while he searched the woods while the kids got some sleep. Sakura noticed that Sasuke's hand had to be bothering him more than normal. I have something for that if you want it, she offered. It's fine. It's not fine, you can't even make a fist, can you? She told him, and his silence told her as much. She sighed as she wondered why all boys had to be like this. Look, just wait, I got something that might help, and if you can use your hand the next day, then it's worth it, right? Sasuke paused and considered it. His hand was bothering him and he didn't like that he couldn't really use it. He nodded his head as he watched their teammate walk into her tent and soon come back out with a small circular box. Hey, that looks like the kind of thing Hinata-chan puts her creams and ointments in, Naruto said as he noticed the small thing Sakura was carrying. Yeah, I learned a bit from her about this from that month-long training with her, Sakura told him as she pulled open the top to show a light green ointment. Pull off your glove. Sasuke, using his left hand, did that as he tried not to wince at the pain he felt from it. Sakura lightly put it on the slight burn she could see on the palm of his hand. Sasuke noticed it right away as the ointment felt cool on his skin and the pain was slowly fading. It's got some healing properties but also has an agent in it that numbs the body slightly. You should put this on your hand every day until it's better, she told him as she finished putting it on. Thanks. Sasuke was truly thankful. At least with this he should be able to sleep tonight without the throbbing pain keeping him awake. He was surprised she had this on her, but it was good that she did. Naruto smiled at Sakura. Hey, that's good to have. It's a good thing you brought that with you. Yeah, well, you two always end up getting hurt the most, so I had learned to get this kind of stuff with me from now on. Honestly, you two sometimes worry me. Hey, I'm not that bad, at least not as bad as Sasuke. Naruto frowned. What do you mean as bad as me? You've been in the hospital more times than I ever have. Sasuke told him. Those were unavoidable. I don't see the difference, Sasuke told him deadpan as he walked to his tent. Hey, wait up, you bastard, let me finish. Naruto went after him. Sakura only smiled at the two of them bickered over what counted as being put into the hospital, but she felt that Naruto would lose this argument. But it was a good sign to her, with those two like that it meant that they were in good spirits. This had been a long week and she knew that Naruto was disappointed that he wasn't with Hinata or with his dad after not seeing them for over a month. Sakura went into her tent as she pulled off her skirt and jacket. She debated just falling asleep as the ninja mesh she wore from Anko could be used to sleep in. Even Anko admitted to having done this from time to time. Sakura just didn't care at that moment and hit her sleeping bag. She could still hear Naruto and Sasuke arguing as she slowly started to fall asleep. Near Konoha, two travelers were on one of the main roads that led to Konoha, mainly used by either merchants or ninja returning from a mission. The two tall men wore black cloaks with red clouds on them as they slowly made their way to one of the 5 great villages. These two were part of Akatsuki, a group of ninja made up of missing nin. They were criminals for hire, mercenaries that were paid to do dirty deeds that others needed to be done but couldn't pull off and didn't care who or how it was done. For years they had silently been working in all the ninja lands, but today was different for this two-man team. They were Itachi Uchiha, the name fear and revolted in Konoha for the mass murder of his own clan. With him was another man of equal standing. This blue-skinned shark-featured killer was Kisame Hoshigaki, the monster of the hidden mist and one of the current 7 swordsmen of the mist. So you going to see home again, huh? Kisame asked his partner for the last few years. It won't be much of a homecoming, Itachi said in an even tone, hardly showing any emotion at all. I severed all ties with that village a long time ago. Yeah, killing your entire clan, all the women and children too, and they call me a monster, Kisame chuckled. I have to say that impresses me, not many have the stomach for that. They were all weak, Itachi told him. I watched the Uchiha falling into being too lax on their training and also relying too much on the Sharingan to do all the work. Yeah, but you use it a lot too. Kisame had seen his partner use his eyes many times. I have my reasons for that. Itachi didn't tell anyone that his vision was slowly going. When he didn't have his Sharingan activated, the world looked blurry in the distance. He found this out a few years ago when he had to strain to see things in the distance that he didn't have to before. It turns out that when he gained his new level of Sharingan, it came at a cost. He was losing his eyes, but thankfully the one that told him about this new level also told him of a way around it. When he had met the leader of the Akatsuki years ago and was told the true power that could be unlocked, he had went with it. Of course, maybe he should say the figurehead leader Itachi had known that Pain wasn't the true leader but the man behind the shadows. It only made sense after all. Only another Uchiha should have known the secrets of the Sharingan. He had learned much and Itachi was thankful that he had spared Sasuke. Soon it would be time to see who was stronger, to see who had the right to rebuild the Uchiha. Itachi believed in strength, in the strength of yourself, but Sasuke was slightly different. He always felt that maybe Sasuke could be more than he was. Although the reason for this trip to Konoha was because of orders, he had his own reasons. Pain had heard of the attack and this was the perfect time to get into Konoha. They were busy with rebuilding and with mission, their security could also suffer from it. Although they would be on higher alert, they couldn't have the manpower they would need for it. Not only that, but Itachi from his years in Anbu knew secret ways through Konoha's defenses that most of the ninja and villagers didn't even know about. Thos secret little ways in that people like Orochimaru and Danzo and his root people often used. They would be overlooked and so they could slip in that way. With Konoha like this, it was perfect chance to see if they could grab the QB boy. If they could attain him this early in the game, then it would save them time later on. This would be their only chance for an opportunity this good. Another might take years to come along. Plus, while he was here, maybe he would look up on his little brother and see how he was coming alone. If Sasuke had given in to hate, he would be going down the path of their clan had been going. He would be their will, and Itachi would show that the iron will of discipline and emotionless was the only path to true strength and power. If Sasuke could win, then Itachi would know that his way had been wrong, but he didn't feel that he was. Sasuke would lose and Itachi would gain the eyes he needed to rebuild the Uchiha in a new way. He would totally erase them from the past and start over, and his brother would be used to test that fate out. It was only fitting after all that the last two Uchiha would fight it out to see who would rebuild the Uchiha clan and in what image. Well, there is one other Uchiha, Itachi thought to himself as they walked a path he hadn't walked in many years. But with Sasuke's eyes I will be able to take him. I don't know what his full plan is, but it can't be as simple as gathering all the tailed beasts, there has to be something more. Whatever it is, it will be a race to see who can complete their plan first. Itachi knew that the best way was to sabotage it, but with Kisame here he couldn't really do that. Not only that, but he needed to know what the full plan was, and that was to keep going along with it until he could figure it out. Besides, even if they caught this boy, there were still plenty others they had to cautiously get. Some were very well protected or even connected to current rulers. They had to be careful as they have always been. So you think we'll have any trouble finding the kid? Kisame asked his partner. Hard to say, but I know who to ask for his whereabouts. Oh, and who is that? The boy's father and sensei, Itachi simply said. That will be it for this video. If you want more, comment down below, like, subscribe. And see you guys later.